Birds are singing in the trees, all the leaves are falling in the breeze. The views all around are the best you've seen, living on the land.
Just hit it again, baby. Hooray! Another episode of Country Cousins, and you are today's star. And you are?
My name is Jaap, and I'll do some photography of the birds around here in Gippsland. So please watch what I've been doing.
Absolutely. They're wonderful. Righto, we'll see you later.
See you later.
Well, now it's Jaap Krijt, otherwise known affectionately as Jaap, isn't it?
Yes, my name is Jaap, and that's my calling name. Jaap is probably my birth name, but in the Netherlands everybody calls me Jaap as the calling name, and luckily the Australians have taken that as well. So I'm going by the name of Jaap.
Well, it's a good name. And here we are on the deck here, and this is where you do most of your bird watching, isn't it?
Yes, well, it's easy actually, just out of the house, straight on the deck, and here I am watching everything that flies around. And it can go from small birds like the blue fairy wrens, and to big birds like the eagles, and other raptors like the Nankin kestrel. People know the small hawks as well.
Funny you should say that, because we've just spotted a big eagle, a wedgie. He's just been flying around, and we had to defer starting our chat because you needed to get a shot of him. You're fond of the raptor birds, aren't you? And they put on some pretty good performances for you, don't they?
Yes, well, at the moment the eagle is one of the most active at the moment. The wedge-tailed eagle, he brings up a chick every year in this environment.
Only one?
Only one chick. Yeah, sometimes they bring up two, but most of the time it's just one. And the chick is hatched and is growing, and so the raptors are now trying to find food. And the other day I saw the eagle catching a koala from the trees.
A young koala, or?
Yeah, this was a young koala, because the normal koala size is probably too big for the eagle, but this young one must have fallen or something must have happened to it, so it's just grabbed it.
You wouldn't have liked that much.
Well, it's life, isn't it? That's how it goes, you know, the weaker animals get eaten. And so the other day he must have had a roadkill, and that was a wallaby. So I've got a picture of the wallaby flying through the air. He also took a white-faced heron from the dam.
Well, they're a pretty big bird, aren't they?
They're pretty big, yeah. But,
nothing for an eagle.
Easy, you know, it's a snack for an eagle, I'd say.
Well, I was going to ask you what they'd feed their young or what they'd eat, but you're telling me now they're not going to mess around with a worm or two, are they?
Oh no, they seek bigger animals. You might get a wombat too. You never know. But if you think about times pre-sheep and pre-foxes and pre-rabbits, they would have taken koalas and they would have taken wombats and, you know, anything that's around back then. But it looks like sheep, for instance, is quite easy. Or chicken, you know, from a chicken farm. Sometimes I can see him circling around and going north way towards Warragul, and I think, oh yeah, it's going to grab a chicken from the chicken farm.
Birds have got to work very hard, I reckon. It'd be hard work. We just go to the supermarket, but they've got to work really hard. And even your little birds, how much of a bird's day would be taken up with feeding its young?
Well, for the smaller birds, I'd say when they're just hatched and flown out of the nest, then they get fed the whole day. Normally for younger birds they have routines, so it's 1 or 2 hours every 3 or 4 hours or so. Little foraging, but when the young are born and have to get fed, that's when they're very, very active, and you will see the birds most of the day.
And you put beautiful photos of birds on Facebook, which I love and all of your Facebook friends love. And you have lovely photos of little birds foraging among leaves and stuff. They can cohabit together, all right?
Yeah, they do. Most of the time they do. And you sometimes see birds colluding together if there comes a snake or any, predator or anything that is a common enemy. They will collude together and chase that way, and rather than one by one or something. So they really do the stuff together. There are also birds that, if you think about fish inhabit different layers of the water. The same goes for birds. So some birds are living on the ground, some do like living in the trees, some like living in the shade, and so that's why it's the cohabitant easy.
Okay, well, who likes to live where then? Where do some of these different birds like to live?
Most of the time, where the food is abundant, and so you have to make sure that you get the habitat right for the birds. If you want to have birds in your garden, you need to make sure that you have plants with flowers and nectar for the birds. So the fairy wrens, they actually like worms and stuff, so you need to have good soil that worms and all kinds of critters crawl in the soil so that they can have that.
So on the ground a bit they do, or they get little insects off bushes too?
Yeah, they do insects as well. So sometimes you can see them flying into the bushes and pick underneath the leaves when there's a lice on there.
Do all birds eat nectar? Drink nectar? What do? Drink it or what?
Yeah, they drink it. So you have to look at the beak actually of the bird. So when you have a long beak, and then you have a long tongue, so to speak, and so they can put their face into the flower and then lick everything of the nectar out of the flower. Yeah.
Gosh, I reckon that'd be a great treat. Well, your New Holland honey eater is obviously a nectar.
Honey eater, yep. So if you have penstemons or sages, they particularly love sages, but also you need to have the indigenous plants like grevilleas and banksias, and they're great flowers for the honey eaters to come to. So you have then not only the honey eater, you got the little wattlebird.
They're as cute as anything, little wattlebirds.
Yeah, they're quite a character. But New Holland honey eaters are also quite characters. They're mostly the main birds you will see in the garden, and if you are into an observing day, you might see the little waterbird chasing the New Holland honey eater and the other way around.
Oh, they'll chase each other, will they?
Yeah, dependent on whether there's a chick or a young bird close by of that particular species, then they defend their territory.
How many territories would you have around this garden? I mean, they're only small.
A couple of families of little waterbirds around here. And the same goes for the New Holland honey eater. So most of the time they try to be out of each other's feathers. And when the little wattlebird sees the honey eater, it will just dive straight onto it, into the bushes. And you hear this crash of the wattlebird. And you think, oh, it must have broken its wing. But no.
What does it do? Peck them?
No, just chase them. So it's not going to hurt the bird. So suppose there is this honey eater on the branch, and here comes then in the little waterbird. It just goes like a big arrow straight towards the honey eater. It's just like a rocket. It goes but in the meantime, the honey eater does just an evading maneuver, and so the waterbird just goes straight through while the honey eater is maybe a meter higher or something. The honey eater's already gone because he sees the wattlebird coming, and so whoop, the honey eater goes.
Well, what do you think so far, Jaap?
Well, wasn't that gorgeous? All those honey eaters putting their faces into the flowers, making them full with
Nectar.
Nectar, yeah.
Nectar.
Making them full with nectar on the head. Yeah. So, please watch our next lot.
After the break. Righto, so now we come back from break. You say, welcome back to bloody country cousins and on with the birds, whatever you like.
Well, hello! Welcome back to Country Cousins with Christine. She's an amazing editor of my photographs that have been taken in Gippsland.
And they're amazing too. On with the show.
Let's have a look what's happening. Yeah, it's quite interesting to watch, and bird life is so great.
Well, you'd have to have your wits about you. You'd be watching all the time, wouldn't you?
Yeah, these are the things that you notice when you observe longer. Then you start knowing the behavior of the birds. That's quite important if you want to make a photograph of the bird. A great photographer said once that you have to know your prey before you can make a good photograph. So that means that you observe what the bird does, where it goes. Like human beings, every bird has its own habit. So take the fairy wrens, for instance. They come at 12 o'clock, then they come foraging around the house. And you've got little corellas that fly by at 5 o'clock at night.
Really? Why those hours, do you think? What are they up to then?
It seems to me that at that particular time, there's the most abundant food to be taken. That's my idea anyway. With the little corellas, it's because they go to nest or to roost for in the trees. You know yourself with the little rainbow lorikeets at night, how much noise they make when they go into the trees. Well, the same is for the little corellas. They just come and go at the same time.
Oh, they're super noisy. Not that I'm very keen on them, I don't think. They sound terrible.
Yeah, luckily we've got maybe 10, 15 around here.
And what, they nest here, do they?
Yep, they do nest like a kookaburra in a hole of the tree.
You just got one family of kookaburras here, or would you have more?
We've got heaps, but I know one particular spot where one couple is breeding every year. So that's always nice to go there and have a look and whether they're breeding and they're starting feeding the kids. And well, it's still, to make a good photograph of that, it's quite far still. So you need a good lens and to catch them close up.
And they're not the only ones that nest in hollows. Probably any bird would they?
Not any bird. You've got birds like the ravens, they make nests. White-faced herons, they make nests. But for instance, the crimson rosellas, they make nests in hollows. So, yeah, to each bird their own, I'd say. And you got, for instance, pardalotes. There are two species of pardalotes. One species nests in a hollow, the other one nests in a burrow in the ground. So they make their own holes in the ground.
Now, the little birds would just disappear when an eagle came out, but some of the bigger ones, they don't like the eagle and they go for him. Magpies, and you've had a fair sky full of different birds attacking your eagle, haven't you?
Yes, it's been very, very active this season. We've got actually a pair of eagles that is grabbing for food at the moment. But, they rest on a branch and then they go into the sky. At the moment that they go off from the branch and they go flying around, that's when you can see other birds trying to attack him, to chase a bird away from their own territory, like with the magpies, and there are even kestrels that are chasing the eagle. That's quite interesting. I've seen this year 5 different species of birds in one go attacking the eagle. So that was the kestrel, it was a goshawk, it was a magpie, it was a raven. They're also species attacking the eagle, and it was all at the same time. The eagle, what it does, so it flies, and then the birds come from above. So the eagle then turns his head around and just squawks at them. Wah! And then the birds fly around him. Some try to nib a feather, and yeah, it's quite funny to watch.
I would have thought that being the size that it is, it wouldn't care about these smaller birds, but it doesn't like them. They seem to be quite successful in chasing them away, don't they?
They are, and they stay a long time chasing the bird. It's not like 20 meters from the tree where he launched, and then it's all pies and peas. But no, they chase him actually right up into the air, and it's quite high up actually.
Yeah, well, I don't think the eagle would be actually scared of them, but it would find it very difficult to just hover around and hunt for its prey on the ground, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Well, he doesn't want to be disturbed, and he's only got his claws and his beak. That's the only defense that an eagle has, and he's so big, so it's easy pickings for the smaller birds. But the eagle is he's got more stamina, can go faster, and so at a certain stage, all the smaller birds give up. It's interesting to watch always how it pans out.
I love the photos you take of these birds. They come up pretty good on the big screen, don't they?
Yep, aren't they gorgeous? So far, this was the second episode of your flapping lot. Let's have a look to the next episode.
See you after the break. Now here we are surrounded by beautiful nectar-producing plants and salvias.
We've got here a couple of plants that are used by honey-suckling birds, like the spinebill, the little wattlebird. Crimson rosellas will steal the flowers of the plants.
They eat the flowers.
They eat the flowers, yeah. They fly in later at night when the dawn is coming, and then they start stealing and eating the flowers. Before that, you've got the honey eaters coming in, like the little wattlebird, the spinebill.
New Holland?
New Holland, that's right, the New Holland honey eater. And they all put their beaks into the flower to get the nectar.
It must be annoying when you spot a really great looking blossom and you put your beak in it and it's all gone.
Well, the flower produces nectar every day, so they actually come back to the same flower couple of times. So it's not that they suck it empty or anything. No, the flower produces because it wants to reproduce itself. So here are the birds coming, and so they drink the nectar, but at the same time they pollinate the flower as well, so that we have the next year more plants and more birds.
I know, that's a good system, isn't it? And do they prefer any salvias among others, like these few here? They're always, and the kangaroo paw, they're always pretty busy.
No, there's actually not a lot of preference. I'd say the indigenous ones are probably still the most used, like the banksias, and so here the kangaroo paw. They just love the kangaroo paw, especially the little wattlebird and the New Holland honey eater.
And do these nectar drinkers, do they all birds eat worms and scratch in the ground for little grubs and little things, or what?
The nectar-eating birds do also chase insects, but I haven't seen them taking worms or anything. So the particular insects on flowers, they would pinch them and eat them. There's this specific event during the year when the ants are flying out of their nests, and during that time you will see the little wattlebirds just chasing everything and anything.
Is this a special flying ant?
Oh no, it's every year they produce eggs, of course. The eggs they hatch, and then too many ants, so when they hatch they have wings on them at the time that they're ready to fly out. Most of the time it's the hottest day of the year, and then they just fly out in big swarms. And that's the time that you see nectar-eating birds also going for insects.
They'd love a day like that, wouldn't they?
Yes, well, I've got a couple of photos. It's really interesting how they go about it.
Yeah. And now the rosellas, they eat a lot of seed. I've seen rosellas perched on the side of a dock plant in full seed, just pecking away at it.
Yep, well, they're seed eaters. The shape of the beak actually tells you what kind of food the bird eats. So this shape is particularly good for cracking seeds. So you've got the rounded beak and a sturdy underbeak. So they have a tongue, and with that tongue they push the seed to the front of the beak so they can squash the peel of the seed, so to speak. So and they do love grass seeds. So all the grass that flowers around here, you will see parrots coming in when the seed is ready to fly or ready to go.
All the grasses are in seed at the moment. Would this be a good time for parrots to have babies to feed them the seed, or what?
I actually don't know that one. When they're hatching in the tree hollows, that they get fed, but I've never seen them being fed. Have not been able to observe that here.
Now, we were talking about nests before, and the black-faced cuckoo shrike was nesting up on a branch in a gum tree in one of your photos, and to me I thought that looked quite exposed.
That's a good one, but it's also a very tiny nest if you look at it. The black-faced cuckoo shrike is one of those birds that lives high in the trees. It doesn't come down often, but its behavior for feeding itself is a bit like the kookaburra, where it stays on a post and then dive into the grass and find some grubs or beetles or anything that they like. But they also take dragonflies that are in the air, but most of the time the black-faced cuckoo shrike lives in the top of the tree. And the funny thing about the black-faced cuckoo shrike is that when it lands, it actually flaps its wings. So it lands on and it flaps and then flaps and it flaps another time, and then it sits down quietly.
They're a little bit rare, are they? Are they the ones
No.
with the ginger breast?
No, that's
No.
probably the fantail cuckoo. That
Yeah,
one-
what about it?
That one has a bronze chest. That's one of those birds that doesn't bring its own offspring up. It just lays its eggs in a nest of another bird. So sometimes you will see, for instance, a fairy wren rearing a chick of a fantail cuckoo.
And can she tell the difference?
No, because this is the great part of the fantail cuckoo. The eggs that they lay are similar to where the nests they lay their eggs. So sometimes it's a fairy wren's nest, or it can also be a yellow robin's nest. So the original bird doesn't see the difference because the egg is the same color and the same print on it.
So they camouflage them. Gee, isn't that amazing?
That is really amazing. But it's not the only thing in nature, because you have also wasps that do the same thing. There's also a wasp called the cuckoo wasp. It's a very nice blue, very metallic blue kind of color. That wasp lays its eggs in nests of other wasps' nests.
How do fairy wrens and ordinary blue wrens get on? They live in the same area? I'm not familiar with fairy wrens.
Well, you know, the blue wrens, the original name is superb fairy wren. So when I talk about blue wren or fairy wren, I actually talk about the same bird. So let's say blue wrens, they love the garden because there's so much for them to eat.
And you're very fond of wrens, and you put one up on Facebook on every Wren's Day, don't you?
Well, that's a tradition that somehow started by someone, and now everybody puts Wren's Days, you know, a photo of a wren on Wren's Day, of course, because it's also a bird that's abundant everywhere, so everybody probably would have a wren in their garden.
And do the wrens lay in an open nest, or some birds have little round nests with holes in the side?
Yes, this one is sort of an open nest, but they actually hide it really, really well. So I've been passing nests which I had never thought they were nests that was so good camouflaged. And one time I actually was pruning and I saw this nest, unfortunately, but it was just a beautiful ball, kind of with little twigs and grass and a little hole at the top. It was just beautiful, yeah.
And can you recognise those different nests? Are you familiar enough with the birds? No.
No, I wouldn't be able to. No. Goodbye!
See you next time, and we will be seeing more of Jaap's beautiful, gorgeous birds. I'm Christine.
And I'm Jacob.
And we'll see you next time.
Birds are singing in the trees, all the leaves are falling in the breeze. The views all around are the best you've seen, living on the land. Take another stroll in the morning sun, The sun's always brighter when the spring's begun. Family all together when the day is done. Living